Welcome to episode 101 of season 2. If you're like me, you either have been or you know someone who can get a little crazy. Stay with us today if you want to stop.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone. We have a fantastic podcast for you today. We'll be discussing the 6 human needs and the crazy 8. These are some fantastic concepts that I've known about for a while, but have recently been able to piece together and really find out how it applies to us and applies to us in construction. A light bulb really went off for me, and I was blown away at how this can help us on our project sites. I'm really excited about it because I just recently used this in my personal life. 2 weeks ago, my wife was like, "Jason, you're being so grumpy. You're being so short with the kids. What is going on?" And I was like, "We've got to go. We've got to hurry up. We've got to do these podcasts. We've got to really do this business stuff." And she turned back at me and she said, "Are you doing this to give and to provide and to have fun? What is this imaginary deadline you have?" I actually shut up for just a minute to listen to her, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And I realized that I wasn't using the 6 human needs properly. I wasn't focused on the right 2. I was focused back on what I'll explain to you today are significance and certainty, meaning I have to get clients, I have to bring in money, I have to make sure that these podcasts are going out on time. And, how many people downloaded my podcast, how many people liked it, how many people commented. And I was worried about my significance, and I was worried about the certainty of clients and money and business and those things. When I really set out to do all of these things in the first place, to serve and to give and to grow and to really change the construction industry, which is a completely different paradigm. And so I put on my phone some reminders about don't be stressed, have fun, go at a good pace, and give. And my daughter put together that little backdrop for my phone on Canva. I put it on my background art on both the lock screen and the regular screen. And I remind myself every day now, what am I trying to do and what is my purpose? And that keeps me centered and keeps me away from the crazy. And so that's my little story for today. First off, I want to thank one of our listeners for sending me a list of questions they have in their organization. We'll be covering those next week. I absolutely love the opportunity to respond to those things. And we'll also have some really good lean topics. You've heard of lean, you've heard of things like 5S, you've heard of things like just-in-time deliveries, visual management, but I'm going to describe them next week as they apply to construction with some very helpful and wonderful tips. So you're really going to want to tune in next week. So to start off our podcast today, we in construction are backed up against the wall all the time. How can we get out of that crazy cycle? How can we get out of the cycle of responding in an inappropriate manner when we're pushed up against the wall by somebody who's trying to negotiate contracts or a trade partner or a difficult owner? How can we do that? Are you a little bit crazy? I bet you're a little bit like me and you're just a little bit crazy. And if you are, you're going to love the content that we have today. So let me tell you a quick story to begin. A field director that I work very closely with, a very good friend, once told me a story when he was running a $180 million project. And this project had multiple superintendents, multiple phases, multiple buildings, absolutely just a huge mega project, not just because of the dollar value, but because of the scope, the finishes, the complexity, and everything else, the partnership, everything. And he was in a trade partner meeting one time, and the mason was giving him a hard time. And they weren't performing. And if you know anything about my buddy, he really wants people to perform. And he's about getting it done right away. And he doesn't take a lot of excuses. And so he kind of lost it. Well, he didn't kind of. He lost it on that mason that one day. And actually, that's not funny. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be laughing. But he lost it on that mason and berated him in front of the entire room. And at the end of the meeting, when everything calmed down and things were seemingly okay, that foreman walked by the office, and my buddy, he just said one thing. He was like, I lost today. I should not have behaved like that because it ruins our credibility. It destroys trust. It really looks bad on us. We ruin relationships, and a lot of times we get in trouble. And so really we need to know how we can get out of these bad situations. And so today's podcast is so important that I'm going to reposition my microphone here just a little bit. And I'm actually going to draw on a whiteboard right now so that I can visually describe this in the way that I need to. I'm not going to read from notes. I'm actually going to draw this. And so I want to talk right now about the 6 human needs. Now, I originally got this from Tony Robbins. This is on the internet. This is everywhere. So this isn't proprietary information. But the way I'm going to explain it ties specifically to us in construction. So the first human need that I usually write down on my list, but is a part of the 6 human needs, number 1 is certainty. And as I write that down, certainty is, to me, do I have consistency? Do I have certainty? Do I have the things in life that I need? Roof over my head, paycheck, my health. Do I have the things that I need in life that make me feel like things are stable? Number 2, variety. Now, if you aren't driving, I would recommend that you actually write these down because this is fantastic content. So number 1 was certainty. Number 2 is variety. If you're like me, and maybe you're not, maybe you are, but I get bored with things sometimes. If I ever feel like I'm just in a plug and play job, if I ever feel like I'm just doing mindless work, if I ever feel like I'm not needed, I end up needing variety, and I really want to break out and get into new circumstances. Some people want variety. They'll go hunting. They'll go to a baseball game. They'll go out in the town. They'll change their circumstances. They'll remodel their bathroom. There's a lot of different things that we can do to get variety. And that's a human need. Number 3, significance. How many people have an issue with this where they need significance? I certainly know I do. And when I was younger, and I think you're probably the same way, you and I, we really had to work hard in order to gain love. You and I really had to earn the things that we wanted in life. And most of that came from hard work, from having a positive attitude, and from being significant in somebody else's eyes. Significance can be praise, being loved by somebody, being respected by somebody, having a role, a position, a title, an honor, whatever it is. Okay. Number 4 is love and connection. That one doesn't need too much explanation, but basically humans need love and connection. Now, those are the first 4. And usually with a team, if I'm explaining this, I'll leave it at that, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the other 2. So the 5th human need is growth. Am I learning? Am I reading? Am I doing trainings? Am I improving? Am I forgiving? Am I religiously and spiritually progressing? Am I growing? So 5 is growth. 6th is contribution. And this one is also somewhat self-explanatory, but am I giving to my community? Am I giving? Am I contributing? So all 6 of these are part of the human needs that we all have. And before I go on any farther, as I'm drawing on my little whiteboard over here, let's just say, and let's take me 7 years ago. And I'm not saying I'm perfect now, but 7 years ago, if on a scale of 1 to 10, what are my top human needs? Let's say certainty was an 8. I'm going to rate myself an 8. Let's say variety was a 2. I don't really like change. Significance was like an 8 or a 9. Love and connection was a 6. Growth was a 3. Contribution was a 2. Okay. So the 2 biggest ones for me, the things that I focus on most of the time, are certainty and significance. So right now, what I'd like you to do, whether you're driving or sitting down or listening on your computer or wherever you are, please listen to these one more time and think about what are the 2 that you focus on the most. So let me list them here for you right now. Certainty, variety, significance, and love and connection. Growth and contribution. So don't raise your hand or anything like that, but like maybe just mentally raise your hand or say I, like Tony Robbins always says. If one of your 2 top human needs that you focus on the most, if one of them was certainty, say I. If it was variety, say it. If it was significance, say I. If it was love and connection, say it. If growth was your focus, say it. If contribution was one of them, say it. So if you have identified your 2 and you just, repeated that back to yourself on your drive or at home or wherever you are jogging, then you now know what 2 you're focused on. That doesn't mean that you don't have all 6 of them still. Every human has all 6 of the needs. What I'm saying is if I had an 8, 2, 8, 6, 3, and 2, I'm focused on certainty and significance the most. But here's what happens to us. Here's what happens. If we don't get our human needs, and let's just even talk about the top 2 that we have right now, we go into what's called the crazy 8. And I absolutely love this. You're going to get this right away. So I'm drawing like a little infinity symbol, a horizontal 8 here right on my screen. And on the left side, I'm going to write sad. And on the right side, I'm going to write mad. And once we have not received or somebody has taken away one of our human needs, we go into this crazy 8 cycle. And so for me, like, let's just simulate something here that actually happens sometimes. So my wife and I will be arguing, okay? And things are difficult and respect leaves the room. So now my significance is affected. I don't feel respected. So I start to pull away. I in the conversation, I start to pout. I get a little bit sad. I'm withdrawn. I'm emotionally withdrawn. And so I'm sitting there, I'm chilling. Maybe I stay away from people for like a half a day, but my mind can't take it. I'm not meant to be alone. So then I go over here into the mad side and I'm mad and I'm like, okay, now we're going to argue about it. Now I'm yelling and now like I'm all passionate. Now I'm saying things that I don't mean. And then I'm like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. And then I'm sad again. And then I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry that I said that. And then I can't stay there very long. And then I'm over here and I'm pissed off again. And then I'm like, let's argue about this. You apologize, but did you really mean it? Oh, no, I'm really sorry. And then I go, sad, mad. And you're just going back in this little infinity loop of sadness and mad because your body and your mind can't stay on the sad side and your body and your mind can't stay mad. And so you're in this cycle, right? Because you've been affected. You've let yourself be affected. Your human needs are not where they should be. Now, if you don't get out of that cycle, then you're not going to be very well off. You're going to end up really pissing some people off, or you're going to enter a state of depression. Now, for people that want to break this cycle, a lot of times, sadly, and I don't mean this in a funny way, I mean sadly, they'll turn to numbing, is what Brene Brown calls it. So that might be drinking, that might be drugs, that might be sex, that might be video games. That might even, unfortunately, be suicide. That might be a number of it might be gambling. So to break the cycle, to get out of the mental and physiological state, somebody will go numb by doing these destructive things. And it's very sad when people get into that cycle and then they choose things like hurting themselves or suicide. It's very, very sad. The other thing that can be done to get out of this cycle is to speak up. And we've talked about this before in previous podcasts and YouTube videos, but to speak up, to talk about something, to give it a voice, and usually you can break the cycle. But for me, religiously, I'm not allowed to go drink and smoke and do drugs and all these other things and gamble and have sex. So I typically just keep in this sad and mad cycle until my wife breaks me out of it. And thank God I'm married to her, and then she can, get me out of that cycle, because otherwise I'd make somebody's life a living hell. Well, actually, I kind of am making her life a little living hell. But she'll break me out of the cycle because she just knows me. But on the project site, as this applies to construction, we're in a little bit different situation. We don't have our spouse there to help us. And a lot of times we're in situations where either in a negotiation or in a trade partner meeting or with an owner, the owner or somebody affects our significance, meaning they don't respect us, they tear us down, or something happens, or they criticize us, or our certainty, meaning they're threatening us, or they're not, like for a trade partner, they're not getting the job done, which will delay the job, which will make sure we don't get that next bonus. You see what I'm saying here? The problem is that somebody took something from us that we need and we want as one of our human needs, okay? So here's the thing. If you were looking at the chart and I was going to ask you this question, can you control your certainty? Can you ultimately have 100% control of the certainty around you of your circumstances? And I bet you would say no. Can you control your variety? Well, you can choose to have variation of certain things, but you can't always go to a Hawaii trip. You can't always take PTO. It's not 100% within your control. So I would put question mark maybe, but I'll also put no. Can we control 100% our variety? No. What about our significance? Can we control whether or not somebody respects us, loves us, feels like we're significant, praises us, has good feelings about us, whatever? The answer is no. We can't control what other people think. Can we control who loves us and who connects with us? No. How many people out there are there that don't have family, don't have a relationship, don't have friends, and they're perfectly wonderful people, but they don't have love and connection. They can't control that. But then if I asked you, can you control 100% whether or not you have a focus on growth? The answer is yes. Do you have 100% control on whether or not you contribute and give and have a giving mindset and you donate to charity? Yes, you have 100% control. And so the first four, you have zero control. And the bottom two, you have 100% control. And so you see, if you put most of your focus in the top four, even if one of them is in the top four, you can't control it. And so you're going to end up in the crazy eight cycle. And then you're going to end up either numbing or having to speak up and hurting people's feelings. And on our project sites, getting mad, getting angry, saying something you don't want to, throwing your hard hat down, ruining a negotiation, saying something you don't mean to an owner, angering another employee, talking down to a subordinate, yelling at craft workers, whatever. I remember a time when we were struggling with concrete on a project, and I just spent a half an hour just absolutely berating the entire concrete crew and just losing my manure on them. And, in construction, that's thought of as, he's being the big boss. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of those things because they were not performing, which was taking away my certainty, which was taking away my significance, meaning how my bosses felt about my performance. They took it away. I went into the crazy eight. I got mad. Then I got sad. It really hurts interpersonal relationships. So how do we get out of this? Well, we have to change what we focus on. And if we can focus more and redefine our reality to be more focused on growth and contribution, then we are always in control. We are always in control of our destiny, and we don't have to go into the crazy eight cycle. So back to what I was talking about with business. Remember when Katie said, Jason, you're grumpy with the kids, you're grumpy with me, you're short. What had I done? What had I done? I start this business, and now I'm worried about getting clients, and now I'm worried about making money, and I'm worried about how many people like my LinkedIn posts. I'm worried about how many downloads I have on the podcast. What two human needs was I focused on? I was focused on certainty, a paycheck, and clients, and I was focused on significance. Do people like my podcast, and do people like what I post on social media? I had switched it from the reason I started my business for growth and contribution. I had switched it to the selfish needs of certainty and significance. Now, I say selfish because that's how I was using them. I will explain that here in just a minute. But once I put that little graphic on my phone and I said, have fun, no stress, enjoy the journey, give to other people, now I'm reminded daily, I started this business to give. I started this business to help people. I started this business to really go out there and change this industry. And I'm growing. I've got so much training. I have coaching trainings. I have social media trainings. I have lean trainings. I have leadership trainings. I have the Kappa Pro training from Patrick Lencioni. I've got like $30,000 worth of things. I'm going to a safety training next week. So many things I've learned this year. What am I stressed about? So once I change my paradigm, now I'm happy. I'm not stressed. I'll get to the content when I get to it. I'm spending my family. Time with my family. I'll show up there and be present with them. I don't have to be mad. And so that's how you change your circumstances. And if you go through your human needs, ask yourself, why are you angry? And it's probably because somebody is taking away one of the previous four, one of the first four human needs: certainty, variety, significance, or love and connection. And if you switch to giving mode, and if you switch to growth mode, if you stay above the situation, you can stay out of the crazy eight cycle. Now, are the first four entirely selfish? Are they entirely bad? No, all of us have those needs. I'm talking about which ones we focus on. Meaning I still have a need for certainty. I still have a need for clients. I still have a need for money. I still have a need for people to like my podcast and do things and to share the information to accomplish my mission, but they're not my primary focus. And what got me from being a teenager to a construction professional was certainty. I want to make a paycheck. I got to support my family. And significance. I want my parents to be proud of me. That served me well for the first 2, 5, 7, 8, 10 years. But it's not going to serve me well now as a leader. I have to switch it to growth and contribution. And that's a message for all of us out there who are supers or PMs or directors or executives or presidents, CEOs, whatever we are. That's super important for us to know. Because if we can do that, we can immediately switch and we can be more effective in everything that we do. Now, let me go ahead and cover a couple more things, and I'm going to tie this up and wrap it up in a nice little bow for us. So the current condition is we feel like we don't have any option than to act out and be crazy sometimes. We feel like a coyote backed up against the wall. But really, when we're in those bad situations, we can make better choices that are more authoritative and more focused on consequences instead of focused on anger. And so the challenge here is for us, if we get into the crazy 8 cycle, to speak up and get help, or to prevent ourselves from getting into the crazy 8 cycle by redefining our reality. How do we do this? Well, that's the question. How do we do this? You have to get leverage and you have to reinforce your new paradigm. And I'll cover that in some future podcasts this next week, worst case 2 weeks from now. But you have to get leverage and you have to redefine your paradigm. And that might come from a morning meditation routine, from some positive affirmations. It might come from you going to Tony Robbins and actually getting leverage on this to change your life. It might come from just putting some notes on your phone. It might come from reminders. It might come from you making a little note, a poster, asking people to hold you accountable. Whatever it looks like, you have to get leverage against this. And I will say that if you don't, the things you're afraid of losing you'll go into the crazy 8 cycle, and your anger and your sadness will make the things you're afraid of come to pass. Meaning, like, let's take, for example, I'm afraid that my wife leaves me. Well, that fear is going to drive me into a fear of losing certainty and significance. I'm going to go into the sad, mad cycle, and I'm going to start behaving in a way that's going to piss off my wife, and she's going to leave. And so we have to realize what's the worst thing that can happen here and get leverage against it and fix it. And I will say that we've covered on this show, on this podcast, numerous different times, the blocks to leadership. And we can get out of those blocks to leadership and lead great meetings and lead great people and lead great projects and have hard conversations and manage people and scale communication and do these things if we're not afraid, if we're not wanting to be liked, if we don't have low self-esteem, if we don't have low self-worth, if we don't have all those blocks to leadership that I mentioned before. And just one more time, if you have any of these blocks, wanting to be liked, closed-minded, playing savior with people, fear of risking, indecisiveness, low expectations of others, being too critical, being controlling, having low self-worth, low self-esteem, focusing too much on problems, having a lack of purpose, fearing embarrassment, fearing rejection, having to be perfect, and having to work hard. If you have those issues, it's probably because you are hurt or you have been hurt by these 4 first human needs, and you've gone into these cycles. And so the challenge here is for us to really get out of this, to really leverage these wonderful concepts and to get out of it. Let me tell you a quick story. And I've read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People probably like 15 years ago. So sometimes my stories get a little bit fuzzy, but I'll tell you the way that I remember the story. He talks about being on a subway train or a train, and he was watching a couple of boys just run wild on this train. They were climbing on the windows, they were screaming, they were making noise, they were walking on seats, they were disrupting people. And he said to the other man, to their father, who was sitting there kind of, quietly, he was like, "Sir, can you get your kids under control?" And the guy looked up and said, "You know what? You're right. I totally apologize. I'm sorry. We just left the hospital where their mother passed away, and I bet they're not dealing with it very well. They don't know what to do, and quite frankly, I don't either." Now, immediately, at the beginning, his paradigm was that these boys were being disobedient and that the father didn't care. After he found out that their mother had died, he was filled with compassion and giving, and his paradigm was, oh my gosh, they need love, they need compassion, they need these things. And if we on our project sites can realize that our foreman, our superintendents, our trade partners, our owner, they're probably doing their best and they lack skill. It's a skill, not a will thing. And they really, don't maybe have negative intentions. Some do, but maybe they don't have the worst of intentions. But you are there to be above the situation. You are a leader because you are better than that situation. You are there because you are growing, and you are there because you can contribute. And you can switch your paradigm from, "Sir, can you get your kids to be quiet?" to, "Oh my gosh, you need compassion right now." The only difference between those two paradigms is the other person's circumstance. And if we can assume that other people are doing their best, we can do some pretty remarkable things. And so I hope that this helps. I really would recommend you go to the Unleash the Power Within event with Tony Robbins if you have any of these things. Everything comes from fear. Everything for emotional interactions that are negative, all of our, bad behavior, everything comes from fear because of a fear of losing something. And if we can get out of our fear, if we can leverage against our fear, if we can realize what fear is doing to us, and if we can redefine our paradigm, redefine our systems, Like I said, through meditation, through affirmations, through going through the event, through reminders, through accountability partners, whatever the case may be. If we can do that, then we can go do remarkable things. And so the glimpse of the future for this is that you continually and better have the ability to control your emotions, to control your emotions at home, and to control your emotions at work. This is very much applicable to construction professionals. And so I hope this helps you so that you can go lead a great project and help everyone else to live a remarkable life as well. And so in closing, please reach out to me at jasons@elevateconstructionist.com or on Facebook or on LinkedIn if you want any feedback, or if you want to give me feedback, or if you want to discuss a podcast topic, or if you want to do an interview. Now, if you email me, I'll keep it completely anonymous. I love your questions. I would rather have every podcast be an answer to a question so it can be your podcast. It can be what you want 100% of the time. So let me give you a quick glimpse in the future here. On Monday, we have an excellent interview with Brandon Montero about intimacy and relationships and how construction professionals can be healthier in that arena and show up properly at work. We have lean topics coming up like I talked about, and we're going to be answering those questions from one of our listeners about how we can really get superintendents bought into the process, the culture, and really bought into their project and the vision of the company. So we have some great content coming up. The vision for this is that we live a more remarkable life, and that instead of people just saying, hey, go fix it or go calm down or go whatever, we can give you actionable and real advice that will help you to solve these problems. This is remarkable. In the meantime, let's go figure out how you can stay out of this cycle and focus more on growth and contribution. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.